Hello, so this is a video for SAP class. We have to do a book review, and the book I read there were a couple options, but the book I chose was The Addicted Brain. So, the main idea of this book is that addiction has many factors, and that anybody can become an addict. It also talks about the issue of addiction, the availability of drugs, negative stigmas about addicts, and the prevention of addiction. So this book is really cool for a couple of factors. It's not a big book per se. So if you're not like a huge reader, this is probably a good choice. The font's not that small or anything, and it includes a lot of pictures and diagrams. Like I just flipped to a random page and you can see there's some interesting diagrams. So the author uses a lot of different diagrams and statistics and graphs and experiments. There were plenty of experiments. So the evidence is definitely convincing, but it's on the speculative side. Like there are multiple experiments, but there's really no definitive answer to the questions asked. The author is very unbiased and tends to depend on the results of evidence from credible science and statistics. A lot of the experiments he uses, he didn't actually conduct himself, though. So this book for sure uses scientific language, but it actually does a really good job of trying to keep things in simple terms. And there were a couple things where I had to go back and reread it slowly. But overall, it's an easy read. Like it's really not that complicated. The author uses very like honest language. He's not trying to like show off that he knows what he's doing or anything, and it strictly comes from research, and it's really not very opinionated. So there was a couple specific passages that I just want to point out into this book that I think were really awesome. If you go to pages 39, 99, 115, and 137, these are all the beginning of chapters. And this author does something very interesting with these. I'm just going to go to the ones on page 99 and pages 115 for you guys so that I can kind of talk more about what they are and why I'm going to be talking about them. So the one on page 99, it's, quote, "Why me, doc? Why am I the one hooked on drugs in my family? Why do I have all this trouble? Maybe I'm a bad seed." So that's kind of, when you actually think about that, that is actually a fairly typical conversation. And I think that's really important to kind of help prevent these stigmas that all drug users always think about themselves and whatnot. And the one on page 115, "After the war, I was a hopeless alcoholic, but with help, I'd been clean for 5 years, not a sip of alcohol. Life was going so well for me, and then the recession hit. Traumatic memories of the war returned, I lost my job, and now I'm about to lose my home because I can't pay my mortgage. I'm so stressed out with trying to make ends meet that I've started drinking again." So those are just two examples. Most of the chapters do start off like that, kind of like showing you the different scenarios of people who use drugs and the issues that revolve around those and what trouble they can get themselves into. So this book really contributes to sociology the most. It looks at how society's ideas influence the lives of drug addicts themselves. There's a really good film, Through a Blue Lens, I believe it's called. It's actually about police that talk to homeless people on the streets, and we actually watched it in my SAP class, which is a psychology, anthropology, sociology class. It's really interesting. This book also talks about the effects that different drugs have on the brain, as well as the psychological and sociological issues that can be linked to addiction. So I definitely learned a lot about actual drugs and the actual effects they have on the chemicals in your brain, and not just the typical effects that you hear of or you see on TV. This really does give you a detailed kind of thing, and it looks at a bunch of drugs. It really focuses on cocaine and meth, and it's really, even if you have nobody that you know of that's addicted, so even if you don't know anybody who has been addicted or anything, it's still an interesting book to read. So I would definitely recommend this book to people who actually are using drugs, who maybe just kind of want to see what it is doing to them and why they feel certain ways, because it really does explain. And the book actually talks throughout the book a lot about the different treatment options available, which is super cool. So overall, I'd probably give this book an 8 out of 10 for me, especially since it was actually like in a way assigned, because it was out of a selection of books. So yeah.